Hi and welcome to 21st Pittsburgh. Today we got a special episode about James Harrison. After the Baltimore Ravens game, where Bud Dupree unfortunately got injured for the rest of the season, Charlie Batch said that he thinks that the Steelers should contact James Harrison to bring him back for the short remainder of the season. This has of course caused some intrigue and interest from Steelers supporters. James has not played football since playoff in the spring of 2018. That is almost 3 years ago. We all know James from his tremendous career for the Pittsburgh Steelers. James was not drafted in his first draft year, 2002, but Steelers signed him later the same year, and he spent 2 years on and off the practice squad for the team. He was released 3 times by the Steelers during those years. James was struggling with the playbook and had a hard time to adjust his playing style to the NFL standard. In 2004, James made it back to the Steelers and managed to take a spot in the squad after injuries on other players. He played 14 seasons in total for Pittsburgh and broke several records for the club. Among those, the record for most sacks with 80.5 in total. Also, how can anyone forget the best pick six of all time? And on top of that, in a Super Bowl final. James Harrison's cultural impact on Steelers is huge. He was that guy that got rejected so many times but still kept fighting and finally made it. Many of the fans from that era often associate Harrison the most with the Pittsburgh Steelers culture and team spirit, but also with James' playing style of showing no mercy to anyone. He often was on the limit and from time to time stepped over it. Some of my favorite moments was when he intercepted and caught a pass made by Drew Brees, and on his way towards the goal line hurdles over LaDainian Tomlinson, the greatest running back of all time, after Franco Harris and Jerome Bettis, of course. Harrison also got some attention when he took care of an intoxicated Browns fan that entered the Steelers-Browns game on Christmas Eve. This was back when the Browns were a good team and the Steelers managed to only win with 41-0. The same year did the Steelers win the Super Bowl with Bill Cowher as a head coach. James was named the Defensive Player of the Year 2008 and had that year 16 sacks, which is still a record for the Steelers in one season. When James in 2017 got cut from the Steelers, there were a little bit of drama. A lot of the media reports following James' departure were focusing on the fact that Steelers had handled the situation badly and portrayed Harrison as a victim, being forced out of the club that he had helped so much over the years and denying him to retire as a Steeler. This had a big backlash when Steelers players came out saying that James wanted to leave and made himself impossible to keep for the Steelers. Marquise Pouncey and Bud Dupree publicly saying that James forced himself out of Pittsburgh. James was angry that he didn't get more playing time and let his mouth run a bit too much and said a lot of stupid things along the way, both publicly and in private. There is no question about it that Steelers staff and coaches felt a bit of a relief when James left the club, but the team and the front office never forced him out. James had turned into a problem for the coaches. The idea when James signed the last contract with Steelers was that James was going to be a cultural leader and showing the young players the Steelers way. But he struggled with the task, and it often turned out for the worse as his playing time went down. Nevertheless, James is now a Steeler by heart, according to himself. But the situation is that, all through, that many Steeler fans still see him as a traitor for his words and his choice to quit on the club and go to the Patriots. Also by letting his mouth run towards Steelers coaches and players after he left. Harrison has also, after his career, said questionable things about the Steelers organization. So when Charlie Batch suggested that a 42-year-old player that haven't played football for 3 years should get back on the team, it is of course intriguing and excited for all the Steelers fans that loved to watch James Harrison during his career. And James was loved by many Steelers, but there is always two sides to a coin. Remember what gave James the opportunity as a young player to get that spot on the team: an injury. Hopefully the Steelers can get a young player in the roster that can get some experience and maybe be a hero for Steelers for many years to come. The Steelers do have exciting depth at outside linebacker, with rookie Alex Highsmith replacing Dupree on that Wednesday when Dupree got injured, and third-year player Ola Aidini. Also, on top of that, they got a veteran, Jaron Elliott, that has extensive experience on special teams. Some trivia about James Harrison. James Farrior once called James Harrison a knucklehead, and he survived it. James would often bench himself at the practices during his first 2 struggling years with the club. James always did his best games against the Baltimore Ravens. The tougher the games were, the better James played. He was planning to retire during his first years in the NFL and study to become a veterinarian. He holds a commercial license as a truck driver. In the Super Bowl final in 2008, did Harrison famously intercept a pass from Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner at the goal line and ran back the length of the entire football field, 100 yards, for a touchdown. It was at the time the longest play in Super Bowl history. James played in the NFL's American Football League in Europe during his first struggling years. He was at the time under contract with the Baltimore Ravens. Thank you for listening to this special episode about James Harrison. Please support me and the Steelers and Penguins community by hitting the like, subscribe, bell button and all. Like, subscribe, bell button, all, so you don't miss out on any of our videos.